chanting, page 14. Yo so bhagava arhang samma sambuddho swakhato yena bhagavata dhammo supatipanno yassa bhagavato savasangho tamayam bhagavantam sadhammam sasangam vinehi sakari yatha arham arupitehi abhipujayam sadhuno bhanti bhagava suchira parinibhutopi pachima janata nukampamanasa vimesakari dugat panaka prabhuti patiganhatu amhakam vidratam hita sukhaya arham sama sambuddho bhagava buddham bhagavan abhivadi swakato bhagavata dhammo dhammam namasam supatipanno bhagavato savak sangho sangam Handmayam buddhasya bhagavato ubhag namkaram karumasi namo tassa bhagavato arhato samma sambuddhassa namo tassa bhagavato आदित्य आवाज चली है अच्छा मेरे पहले आ रही थी अब चली है आवाज देखती हूँ आवाज नहीं आ रही हाँ सर को बोल रही हूँ फिर आप बता देना ठीक है मैसेज कर देना हाँ पहले आ रही थी अब नहीं आ रही आवाज
आवाज
फोन करेंगे टाइपिंग वर्किंग नाउ दिख रही वर्किंग नाउ लिखा है वर्किंग नाउ और ये handmayam से करते हैं handmayam buddhasya bhagavato ubbhag namkaram karumase namo tassa bhagavato arhato samma sambuddhassa namo tassa bhagavato arhato samma sambuddhassa namo tassa bhagavato arhato हन्दमयं बुद्धानुसतिनयं करोमसे तं कोपन भगवन्तम् एवं कल्याणो इति सद्दो अभुगतो इति पिसो भगवा अरहं सम्मा सम्बुद्धो विद्याचरण संपन्नो सुगतो लोकविदु अनुत्तरो पुरुषधम्मसारथि सत्ता देवमनुसानं बुद्धो भगवाति हन्दमयं बुद्धाभिगीतिं करोमसे बुद्धवारहन्तवरता द्विगुणाभियुतो शुद्धाभियानकरुणा हि समागततो बोधिसियो सुजनतं कमलं वसुरो वन्दामहं तमर्णं शिरसा जिनेन्दं बुद्धो यो सर्वपाणिनं शरणं खेममुत्तमं पठमानुसतिष्ठानं वन्दामि तं शिरेणहं बुद्धस्सस्मिदासीव बुद्धो मे सामिकेसरो बुद्धस्सहं नियादेमि शरीरं जीवितं चिदं वन्दन्तीयं चरिष्यामि बुद्धस्यैव सुबोधितं नत्वि मे शरणं अन्यं बुद्धो मे शरणं वरम् तेन सज्जवज्रेण वड्रेयं सतु शासने बुद्धं मे वन्दमानाय यं पुण्यं प्रसुतं इद सभ्येऽपि अन्तरायामि माहेषुं तस्य तेजसा हन्दमयं धम्मानुसतिनयं करोमसे स्वाखातो भगवता धम्मो सन्दिष्टिको अकालिको एहि पस्सिको औपनयिको भजतं वेदितव्यो विन्योहीति हन्दमयं धम्माभिगीतिं करोमसे स्वाखाततादिगुणयुगवसेन सेयो यो मग्गपाकपरियतिविमोखभेदो धम्मो कुलोकपतना तदधारिधारी वन्दामहं तमहरं वरधम्ममेतं धम्मो यो सर्वपाणिनं शरणं खेममुत्तमं द्वितीयानुसतिष्ठानं वन्दामि तं शिरेणहम् धम्मस्सास्मिदासीव धम्मो मे सामिकेसरो धम्मसहं नियादेमि शरीरं जीवितं चिदं वन्दन्तीयं चरिष्यामि धम्मस्यैव सुधम्मतं नत्ति मे शरणम् अन्य धम्मो मे शरणं वरम् एतेन सच्चवज्जेन वड्ढेयं सत्तु शासने धम्मं मे वन्दमानाय यं पुण्यं पशुतं विद सभ्रेति अन्तरायामि माहेषुं सतेजसा हन्दमयं सङ्घानुसतिनयं करोमसि सुपटिपन्नो भगवतो सावक संगो उजुपटिपन्नो भगवतो सावक संगो न्यायपटिपन्नो भगवतो सावक संगो सामीचिपटिपन्नो भगवतो सावक संगो यदिदं चत्तारि पुरुषयुगानि अष्टपुरुषपुद्गला एष भगवतो सावक संगो आहुनेयो पाहुने दक्षिणेयो अंजलिकरणीयो अनुत्तरं पुण्यखेतं लोकसाति हन्दमयं संगाविगीतिं करोमसे सधम्मजो सुपटिपत्तिगुणादियुतो यो अष्टविधो अरियपुगलसङ्गसेठो शीलादिधम्मपवरा सयकाय चेत्तो वन्दामहं तमरियान् गणं सुशुद्धम् संगो यो सर्वपाणिनं शरणं खेममुत्तमं तदीयानुसतिष्ठानं वन्दामि तं शिरेणहं सङ्घस्स्मिदासीवा संगो मे सामिकिस्सरो सङ्गसं नियादेमि शरीरं जीवितं चिदं वन्दन्तीयं चरिष्यामि धम्मसङ्गस्सुपटिपन्नतं नत्ति मे शरणम् अन्यत् संगो मे शरणं वरम् एतेन सच्चवज्जेन वड्ढेयं सत्तु शासने संगं मे वन्दमानाय यं पुण्यं प्रसुतं इद सभ्येऽपि अन्तरायामि माहेषु तस्य तेजसा
भोजन में परीक्षा
पाने पर
130 नंबर पेज में
कितना दिया
130 पे है
132 पेज 132 भुजंग परित्तम भुजंगो सति संखातो धम्मानं विचयो तथा विरियं पीतिपसति भुजङ्गा च तथा परि समाधिउपेकभुजङ्गा सद्द एते सवदसिना मुनिना सम्मद्द आखाता भाविता बहुलीकता संवतन्ति अभिज्ञाय निब्बाणाय बोधिया एतेन सच्चवच्चेन सोतिते होतु सर्वदा एकस्मिन् समये नाथो मोग्गलानं च कस्सपं लीलाने दुःखिते दिस्वा भुजङ्गे सत्तदेशयि ते च तम् अभिनन्दित्वा रोगामुञ्चेषु दक्षिणे एतेन सच्चवच्चेन सोतिहोते होतु सर्वदा एकदा धम्मराजापि लीलन्नेनाभिपीडितो चुन्दद्धेन तयेव भणापेत्वा न सादरम् सम्मोदित्वा च आबाधा तुम्हावुत्थासिठानसु एतेन सच्चवच्चेन सोतिते होतु सर्वदा पहीनाते च आबाधा तिन्नन्नं पिमहेसिणम् मग्गाहत किलेसाव पत्तानुपत्तिधम्मतम् एतेन सच्चवच्चेन सोतिते होतु सर्वदा
We now listen to Desna by Rinpo Samedho, titled The Samadhi of Vipassana.
So this evening, more encouragement, the necessity of being patient. Patient endurance is necessary for meditation. And when I first met Luang Por Chai, one of his first instructions to me was to develop patience, which the life at that time at Wat Pah Pong, if you couldn't survive if you weren't patient. And being American, you're not particularly brought up to be patient. You want to get things instantly, and it's not a virtue that's highly regarded. Where in monastic life, in Buddhist monastic life here in Thailand, it's an absolute necessity. Keeping the Vinaya, living within a structured lifestyle, brahmacharya, meditation, all this requires patient endurance. Also, just to encourage you, the first 3 days of I found in a 10-day retreat, you're coming from rather busy lives, a lot of duties, responsibilities, activities, and then suddenly you come to 10-day meditation retreats, more sedentary, quiet, silence, reflective. So the bodies are not used to that. Our bodies, it takes about 3 days to kind of relax and settle into the more silent, quiet environment of a 10-day meditation retreat. So don't feel discouraged if you feel incredibly restless, physically restless or sleepy. It's just part of our human condition. So like listening, you're listening to my voice, the words that I'm saying. I always like this idea of listening as a upaya or a skillful means. Because we're in the puto, in the knowing of the present. It's more like listening, witnessing. It's not evaluating, criticizing, praising, seeking, trying to control, trying to annihilate what you don't like. It's more like it is an open attention. In the two types of meditation, samatha, vipassana, samatha meditation is going out, focusing on an object. So you're sending your awareness out to kasina or to the breath, to a mantra. So, this kind of, and this leads to tranquility, to peace, to absorption in objects. But in order to do that, you have to dismiss everything else. You've got to not have any interest in anything other than the object of concentration. So it's a concentration practice. And then vipassana, samatha, and then vipassana is this wide open attention, this kind of listening, awareness. It's not discriminating, it's not focused on an object. It's just this broad, open attention to the present moment is like this. So it's more like listening. Like you're going out into the forest and just listening to the sounds of nature, to the movement of the leaves or the birds. You're not trying to seek anything or focusing on any particular sound or tree or event, but just this alert attentiveness, listening in this wide spectrum that embraces everything in the present. So this is like the samadhi of vipassana, samadhi. It includes everything. Everything belongs. Everything belongs, like when you're listening, when you're in this state of open attention, relaxed attention, then whatever, the thoughts that come and go, the memories, the emotions, the restlessness, physical restlessness, the sensations of the body, the sensations of breathing, pleasant, painful, neutral, whatever the quality might be, they belong. We're not trying to control or deny or discriminate. So this is called awareness, mindfulness. one of my favorite teachings is from Luang Pu Dun, who was a famous Thai monk who passed away many years ago. And his version of the Four Noble Truths goes like this: when you send consciousness outside, looking at things, seeing, smelling, tasting, touching, จิตที่ส่งออกนอกเป็นเหตุให้เกิดทุกข์ So when this sending our consciousness out through the sense organs is the cause of suffering. And then the result of sending the citta or consciousness outside, the result is dukkha. So it's a kind of interesting take on the Four Noble Truths. And the first Noble Truth is, as taught by the Buddha, there is suffering. The second Noble Truth is the cause of suffering. And in Luang Pu Dun's version, the first Noble Truth is the second Noble Truth. The cause of suffering is sending consciousness outside, oknok, to objects of sense, to thoughts, to emotions. And the result of sending our awareness to objects of sense is dukkha, or suffering. And the third Noble Truth is the path in Luang Pu Dun's version of the Four Noble Truths. Jit and jit, consciousness knowing itself, is the path. So that's the Eightfold Path. Consciousness knowing consciousness, awareness being aware of awareness, is the path, the Eightfold Path, the path of non-suffering. Then the fourth Noble Truth of Luang Pu Dun is the result of developing the path is nirodha, the end of suffering. So notice, like in the traditional form of the Four Noble Truths that the Buddha taught to his 5 disciples in Varanasi 2,560 odd years ago. This is an amazing teaching developed with wisdom. It's a wisdom teaching, it's not a doctrinal teaching. So when the Buddha attained enlightenment in Bodh Gaya, when he realized Dhamma, saw the path, realized non-suffering for himself, he thought, how can you teach this? This is the words, there's no words that you can describe non-suffering or desirelessness or perfection or completeness. Because Dhamma is perfect, it has no flaws. Where the words that we use are all about flaws, about this is better than that, this is right, wrong, this is high, this is low. How can you use language to describe, to get across the perfection of Dhamma? It's impossible. You have to give up thinking and trying to think about it, analyze it, or find it. So, and according to the scriptures, the Buddha thought there's no point in, there's no way to teach Dhamma. So he But then in the scriptures, the god Brahma-Sahampati came down from the heavenly realms and said, there are those with only a little dust in their eyes, you must go forth and teach. There's those that are ready for realization, so you can still make something, point to Dhamma, rather than define it or make it into a doctrine, a metaphysical position, a philosophy, a philosophical approach, an idealistic. It's something that needs pointing at to be recognized, because it's here and now. It's not something too high and above us that ordinary people could never see or realize. So the Buddha agreed to go forth, and on his way to Varanasi from Bodh Gaya, he met an ascetic who was very impressed by the Buddha's demeanor, his kind of luminosity, radiance, and asked him what he had realized. And the Buddha said, I am the realized Buddha, perfectly enlightened Buddha. And of course the ascetic didn't understand the reality of that and turned away, So that was a very direct teaching. It wasn't egotistical exaggeration or inflation. It wasn't the Buddha was bragging or overestimating himself. It was true. The perfectly realized enlightened one is awareness itself. But most people see that in terms of, the ego. This body, this person claims to be the Buddha. It sounds like overestimation to most people. So instead, when he went to Varanasi, his 5 colleagues, the 5 Panchavakya colleagues who were ascetics, who practiced, developed all kinds of concentration practices, and had kind of rejected Gautama the ascetic when they didn't think he was living up to their ascetic standards. They recognized there was something, that special about the presence of the Buddha, so the Buddha's first sermon was what we call the Four Noble Truths. So these are noble truths. Noble is not ultimate truths. Ultimate truth is Dhamma. Absolute truth is the Dhamma. It's reality itself. But noble truths, they're noble because they're pointing to ultimate truth, to Dhamma, to the reality of here and now. So, due to the Buddha's insight, he pronounced the first noble truth: there is suffering, there is dukkha. Dukkha is the Pali word for suffering. And this, translated into English, there's, many people trying to different translations of dukkha into English terms. But generally, the word suffering is a kind of generic word for dukkha. Includes all kinds of physical, mental, emotional, whatever suffering there is. Now the statement, the noble truth, this is, there is suffering. It's not absolute truth. It's not ultimate truth. So what is noble about suffering? Why is it a noble truth? Why would somebody take something that nobody wants? None of us want suffering. Nobody wants to suffer. We want happiness. Why would the Buddha take something that nobody wants in his first sermon and make a pronouncement, there is suffering? And then he said, and what to do about suffering is to understand it. To understand something, you have to accept suffering. If you're just reacting to suffering like we generally do, any kind of emotional, physical discomfort, pain, or whatever, we try to get rid of it, so the reaction to the ordinary person is to react against it, try to get rid of it, blame it on conditions, on others. But the Buddha's advice was to understand. So this is to understand suffering. You're looking at it from this broad perspective of awareness. You're not trying to analyze why you're suffering or who's the cause of it, or is there something wrong with you for suffering. It's a noble truth to understand. So this is suffering in any of its forms, whether it's just anxiety, worry, fear, anger, resentment, confusion, doubt, worry, greed, lust, whatever it is. It's to understand it, and to understand that we accept it. And this is where patience is necessary. Because usually, when we're suffering, we're impatient. It makes us impatient. We don't like it, we don't want it, we want to get rid of it. So this emphasis on patience, on Kanti Barami, in Pali we say the Barami of patience, Kanti Barami, is to understand it. Allow it to be what it is, accept it. It's like this. So we use this word dattada, or it's like this, or benyang niang. So we're no longer judging it or trying to do anything with it, but allow it to be what it is, whatever form it takes. Physical pain, anguish, grief, despair, depression, greed, hatred, delusion, all the variations of dukkha, of suffering. So we understand it. Then we have the third insight, that the realization from this understanding, it's called an insight, Jnana Dassana in Pali, suffering has been understood. So this is the paradigm of each noble truth. The statement, there is suffering, what to do about it is bhatibhata. So the statement, like there is dukkha, is like Bhariyati Dhamma. It's a statement from the scriptures. We read it, when we have books on the Four Noble Truths, we read there is suffering. What to do about suffering is the second aspect of the First Noble Truth, is to understand it. And through that understanding we have the third insight, which is suffering has been understood. So there's three aspects to each noble truth, and this is a paradigm of reflection, of intuition. When I talk about reflection, it's not rational thinking, it's not reason or logic that we're encouraging. When you try to reason out, why do I suffer, who's at fault, and then we analyze, we try to, we start thinking, making judgments, so it becomes very much intellectually oriented brain condition that keeps us from really understanding or feeling anything. Where intuitive intelligence, intuition, the English word intuition, is on the heart, in terms of the physical body, the rational, reasonable abilities are up in the head. The intuitive sensitivity, the feeling realm is felt in the heart. Not the physical heart that's inside the body, but in this area, we tend, when we point to emotion, we don't point to our head. We point to grief or love or whatever, when you talk about someone we love, we talk about a heartfelt experience. It's more intuitive, it's not rational, it's not reasonable. So in this retreat, it's an exercise in developing this intuitive awareness. It's not an intellectual exercise, but an intuitive one. Awareness, heartfelt recognition, it's like this. With your intellect, you'll judge it. You think, we tend to judge our emotions from the brain level, from the head. This is grief, this is sorrow, this is anguish, this is love, this is hate. We give them names. We have various opinions about them, and we think about them. But the more we think about our emotions, the less we understand them. The feeling of life isn't rational. It's pleasure, pain, neutral feeling. It's like this. This is a sense realm that we're experiencing in this human form. It's all about sensitivity. It's not about ideals like how things should be. Like your intellect is about, you can create perfect ideal systems through thinking, using superlative thoughts about what's the best, the kindest, the ultimate. So we can create ideals, but they don't feel anything. The ideals have no kind of feeling to them. They're beautiful, they're high up there, but they're rational, they have no blood, no nerve endings. So in meditation, it's not about trying to create ideals about ourselves or Dhamma or Buddhism or teachers or anything like that, but observing, was witnessing this Puto, awareness. It's intuitive. So the second noble truth is the cause of suffering. There is an origin, there is a cause of suffering. It's not ultimate truth. It's not permanent. Suffering is, has conditions for it to arise. And then whatever arises ceases. So the second noble truth, the cause of suffering, is this, is a statement, there is the cause, the origin of suffering, it's due to ignorance of Dhamma, the desire that we create, that we attach to, we create desire, we want to, sensual desire, we identify with the senses, what we see, we have desires. If it's attractive, beautiful, inviting, we want it. Sensual desire through seeing, through hearing, smelling, tasting, touching. Ability to perceive through the senses. And the attachment, the upadana, the clinging to our desires. Kama danha is the first kind of desire, sensory desire, sensual desire. Then bhava danha, danha is the Pali word for desire. Bhava danha is desire for becoming, getting something you don't have. So bhavadanha is the desire that we want. We want to get samadhi. We want to get jhanas. We want to get stream entry. We want to, they're good desires, even noble desires, to become an arahant or a Buddha. Because we feel at the time that we're not enlightened, there's something wrong with us, we have faults, weaknesses, problems, we suffer, and we want to get rid of suffering. We want to be permanently happy. Desire for becoming permanently happy. Bhavadanha. And then there's vipavadanha, desire to get rid of suffering, desire to get rid of greed, hatred, delusion, desire to get rid of the kilesas, the defilements, the anger, the resentments, the jealousies, the fears, desire to annihilate that which we don't like, don't want. So these three categories of desire. We investigate. I found this particular Second Noble Truth very helpful in the beginning of my monastic life. Because in English, desire is always kind of a pejorative term, so if you say somebody has a lot of desires, it's usually, an insult. Something wrong with them, or they're obsessed with low kinds of desires. But in Dhanha, it can be, we have noble desires, desires to get rid of greed, hatred, and delusion. That's why we come to retreats. Desire to get something, to become something better than what we believe we are. Desire to get rid of fear, anger, resentment. But desire, Dhanha, is a sankhara, it can be observed through awareness. We're not judging it. It's not about getting rid of it anymore, trying to make ourselves totally desireless, but through recognizing desire as the cause of suffering, by attaching to desire, by ignorantly clinging to desire, these three kinds of desires, that's the cause of suffering. The cause of the First Noble Truth. This heedless, blind attachment to desire. And Puto, awareness, is aware of desire. Desire is a sankhara, all kama-dhanha, bhava-dhanha, vipava-dhanha. They're sankharas, they rise and cease. So it's not about getting rid of them or destroying desire, but understanding them. So we, investigate, like kama-dhanha is quite obvious. Sensual desire. Bhava-dhanha, we begin to see how, we want to get something, and so much of many of the monks, trying to get some, samadhi, so much emphasis on attaining samadhi, getting jhanas, attaining something you don't have, based on bhavadanha. The ego is egotistical, it wants the sense of a self, wants to get something that you've read about or you think is desirable that you don't have. Or we think the other, get rid of greed, hatred and delusion. Vipavadanha, kill the kilesas. Like you often hear teachers talking about kill the kilesas. And so it's not about killing anything. It's not annihilation, aversion, wanting to get rid of greed, hatred and delusion, but in recognizing attachment to the desire to get rid of things is the cause of suffering. Desire to get something you don't have is the cause of suffering. Desire for pleasant sensory experiences, objects of senses, that blind clinging and attachment, upadana, Pali word for attachment is upatana. So the insight, what to do about desire, is to let go. And to let go of desire, so letting go is not destroying anything. It's not annihilating desire. This is a desire realm that we're experiencing. The bodies we have are all created out of desire. The senses that we identify with are all about wanting, seeing, wanting to get rid of what we don't like, trying to hold on to what we like. But what is it that is aware of desire isn't desire. So this is huto, puru, knowing desire, these three kinds of desire. And seeing for yourself that your identity, the way you identify with these desires, your habitual clinging, attachment, belief, identity with these three kinds of desires is the cause of suffering. The insight is to let go. So letting go is relaxing. It's not destroying. Not about getting rid of desires, but seeing the suffering you create through attachment, this ignorant, blind attachment to desire. So the first noble truth is to understand suffering. The second noble truth is to let go of the causes of suffering. So this is intuitive awareness. This isn't about being reasonable or about, trying to get something you don't have that you imagine you'd like, or trying to get rid of what you have that you don't like, but in understanding and in letting go. When you see the suffering, the pointless, needless dukkha, suffering you create through this blind attachment to sankharas. So these are the first two noble truths. There is suffering, there is the origin of suffering. Now in my own practice, when I had the insight into the second noble truth, I had the insight to let go of desire, and that was, so I developed a kind of mantra, so it was like with Puto, or I'd say let go, when I see I become obsessed or caught up in my thoughts or emotions or forms of greed, hatred, delusion, I'd be aware of feeling like this, and I'd use this term, let go, ploy one. So I found that helpful, just to remind myself to let go. And that letting go became pretty much an obsession. And then it became more like vipawadana, trying to get rid of things. So this is where intuition is so important, intuitive intelligence. Because, you begin to see, that you can use Puto as a way of suppression, a way of denial, a way of annihilating, or letting go as a kind of habitual reaction of suffering, trying to get rid of it. And this is where learning to trust your awareness, the wisdom of awareness. So even the techniques, meditation techniques that you use, don't just become mechanical practices. Because meditation techniques can be different, varied, but they can also become mechanical. Without this awareness, we can become habituated just to form meditation habit practices. Where awareness isn't a habit. It's not something that's conditioned. It's the gate, the door to the deathless, to Dhamma, to Amatta Dhamma. So it's not a desire, it's not a Kama-danha, Bhava-danha, Vipawa-danha. It's aware of danha. Danha's like this, and it, Sape Sankara Anicca. It arises, ceases. You aren't always feeling desires. Desires come and go according to conditions. So you're taking your stand, putting yourself in this Puto position, this awareness, this knowing. It's like this. It's not judging, not trying to control or create anything other than being aware. Whatever arises ceases. And then the patience, the endurance through this, through letting go, is like thinking is very quick. When you think, words, they arise and they pass away very quickly. Emotions kind of linger, they have an effect on the physical body. So like anger, for example, feeling angry is a very strong emotion that we experience. We can say, let go of anger, and then we hope that just by saying let go that it'll disappear, but maybe the kind of thinking process disappears, but there's still the heat, that kind of feeling that resonates, remains, lingers in the physical bodies that we have. So we're aware of that, of how emotions affect just the physical body that we're experiencing in the present. So that takes patience to allow the anger to be what it is till it ceases, naturally ceases, without our trying to get rid of it. This is what Kanti Bharami is, or patient endurance. It's allowing conditions to be what they are, performing their duty as what arises, allowing them to cease. And when they cease, when we experience the cessation, that's Nirodha, the third noble truth, the end of suffering, the cessation of dukkha, of suffering. And that is path knowledge. When we have that recognition of the end of suffering, it doesn't mean that we never suffer again. It means that what we were suffering with is stopped, has ceased. We've allowed anger to be what it is, patiently allowing it, accepting it, even welcoming it, and allowing it to stay as long as it wants to, till it ceases. Then there's a recognition of Nirodha, the absence of suffering is like this. It's peaceful. Nirodha is peaceful. Consciousness, this pure, immortal consciousness is peace itself. It's peacefulness. If you want to describe what it's like, the word peace comes to my mind as the first kind of reality of it. It's peaceful. Where thinking, emotions are not peaceful. We can suffer a lot just by creating problems in our mind about the future, or feelings of resentment or guilt about the past. So peace is our true nature. This is home. This is where we rest, where there's no fear, no greed, no hatred, no delusion. And this can be realized, each one for themselves. It's what they say, Bajjitang Vaitila Pavinyuhi, to be realized individually through wisdom. So then the insight into Third Noble Truth, there is the end of suffering, the cessation of suffering. The second aspect of that is it should be developed or made clear or realized in daily life. So this is where we integrate into our daily life this peaceful reality of conscious awareness. In Thai they say tam hai chang, to make it clear, because an insight at first, the first insight we have into Nirodha is usually brief. You have a kind of profound understanding. It's deep. It's not just intellectual understanding. It's called jnana dasana. It's an insight, a gut level realization. So this kind of realization, at first, then we fall back easily into our old habits of thinking and feeling, because that's what we're used to. That's how we relate to ourselves and the world around us, to our families, to our society, and so forth. Is all habitual behavior. But to tam hai chang, make this realization, develop it, cultivate it, is to trust the awareness. So once you've had that insight, then you still have the vipaka kamma of your lifetime, so you still get angry and greedy and confused and so forth. But now there's a kind of insight, a kind of knowledge that you never had before. that comes not from the brain, from ideas that you read in books or scriptures, but in this kind of level of profound understanding of letting go of the causes of suffering and developing this, cultivating. This is what bhavana, the word bhavana really means, is to cultivate, to develop, to make clear our natural reality of awareness in our daily lives. Every moment of our life. So the first noble truth is to understand suffering. The first three aspects: there is suffering, it should be understood. The insight, it has been understood, leads to the second noble truth: the causes of suffering should be relinquished, let go of. And then we have the insight: they have been let go of, they have been let go of. And then the third noble truth: there is the absence, the cessation of suffering. It should be cultivated. Non-suffering, awareness, peacefulness, trusting awareness. And then the third aspect, it has been realized, has been developed. And then the fourth noble truth is based on samadhi, right understanding. It's not only right, it's perfect understanding. When you had these insights into the first three noble truths, there are three aspects to each truth. That's 9 insights. Then the Eightfold Path, or the fourth noble truth, samadhi, is perfect understanding of the path. So that it's not really a path, it's just a kind of metaphor. It's about here and now. Samadhi samatsangapo, perfect intention. You know, the way we look, the way we see, leads to perfect speech, perfect livelihood, perfect action. So, so the Eightfold Path develops. There's samadhi, sama sangapo, sama vada, sama gamanto, sama chivo, perfect effort, sama vayamo, sama sati, sama samadhi. Now, this isn't a path that it has stages. It's kind of some simultaneous arising. With samadhi, that's perfect understanding. So there's no doubt anymore. There's nothing there's a knowing, a profound knowing of peace. It's metta, it's loving kindness. How we relate to the world around us is through metta, through unconditioned love, through awareness, peacefulness. So we're not just kind of zombies, caught in a state of purity that is inoperative, but the Brahma-viharas bloom in that enlightened state. Metta, karuna, mudita, upekkha. They're not created through the thinking anymore. They're the realities of love, metta, compassion, mudita, joy, upekkha, equanimity. So then this is to be developed or cultivated. Third Noble Truth is to make clear. Fourth Noble Truth is to cultivate this through samadhi. So this is on an intuitive plane now, rather than just a rational understanding of, definitions of the Eightfold Path or the Four Noble Truths, its three aspects, 12 insights. We can all memorize that from reading the basic instructions on the Four Noble Truths, but as I was saying in the beginning of this evening, this isn't about acquiring knowledge about Buddhism or Dhamma. It's the reality of Dhamma. It's real. It's not something kind of mystical and remote and impossible for any of us to recognize. It's so close, so real. Remember that our self-views, our egos are complicated. As personalities, as physical individuals, we're all very complicated, and simplicity, the ultimate simplicity of Dhamma, baffles us because we think. Thinking creates divides and complicates everything. Emotions are complicated. Society, that's why society is the way it is, why find peacefulness in society, seems almost impossible. Why is that? Because nobody understands peace. They don't know peace of their own natural state. They have some idea of making peace agreements, peace conferences, getting together and kind of agreeing on developing peace, but it never really works very well because we're complicated individuals that think differently, feel differently, react differently. We aren't just manufactured out of like tin soldiers off an assembly line. Each one of us is unique and complicated in our own special way. So for a degree on everything, why do people have to be the way they do? Why does the President of the United States have to be like that? Because this is natural for, the karma of being a complicated personality is like this. It's different than what I am. Like, why can't he be like me? It's impossible. Nobody can be like me. Because consider me is a series of complicated habit patterns, assumptions, conditioned phenomena. But what is common to all of us? What is our bond as human beings? Is consciousness. It's not personal, it's not complicated. And it's what we actually are. And this is why when the Buddha's directional signs, the Four Noble Truths, are pointing at that. It's, you couldn't describe it, but taking suffering, a common, ordinary experience that any of us can relate to. It's not high up, it's not mystical, it's not complicated. And by understanding that, we realize true happiness or peace. So this is the kind of unique quality of the Buddha Dhamma, Buddha's teaching, taking something so banal, so ordinary as suffering, and understanding it not through analyzing it, but through understanding suffering is impermanent, it's not self. So, this morning,
प्रवचन का सारांश आप प्रस्तुत करते हैं। हमने शुरू किया इस बात से कि पेशेंट एंड्योरेंस जो है खांति बहुत आवश्यक है साधना के लिए, और बताया कि जिस तरह से भिक्षुओं के लिए तो बहुत ही आवश्यक है, ख़ासतौर पर तब जब वो खुद भिक्षु बने थे अजान चा के यहाँ। हमने बताया कि जो दो तरह की साधनाएं हैं, समथ और विपस्सना। समथ में तो हम एक ऑब्जेक्ट पे फोकस करके रखते हैं और बाकी सब चीज़ों को ध्यान नहीं देते ताकि एकाग्रता बढ़े, उससे शांति मिलती है, मन एकाग्र होता है, लेकिन उसमें बाकी सब चीज़ों को छोड़ दिया जाता है। जबकि जो विपस्सना है उसमें ओपन अटेंशन होना चाहिए, सब चीज़ों को हम एम्ब्रेस करते हैं, किसी भी तरह का, चाहे वो आवाज़ हो, शाह या कोई विचार हो, चाहे शरीर के अंदर होने वाली सांस की गतिविधि हो, या शरीर में होने वाले इमोशन हो या वेदना हो, हर चीज़ का उसमें स्वागत है, किसी चीज़ को छोड़ा नहीं जाता, हर चीज़ को हम जानने का प्रयास करते हैं। तो वैसा करने से जो मन एकाग्र होता है उसको समाधि या विपस्सना की समाधि कह सकते हैं। वो भी एक तरह का एकाग्र चित्ती है। फिर उन्होंने 4 आर्य सत्यों की बात समझाने की शुरू की। पहले उन्होंने उनपुर दुन का जो वर्षन है वो बताया कि मन हमारा अगर बाहर जाता है तो वो दुख का कारण है, और उसका जो अनुभव होता है वो दुख है, और मन अगर अपने आप को ठीक से जानता है तो वो दुख से निकलने का मार्ग है, और उसका ठीक से उसको अनुभव कार्यान्वित करने से दुख निरोध होता है, दुख की समाप्ति होती है। तो उन्होंने कही उनको काफ़ी अजान सुनने को बहुत अच्छा लगता है। तो उन्होंने फिर मूल शिक्षा की बात भी की, भगवान की मूल शिक्षा की, कि जो 4 आर्य सत्य हैं कि वो एक विजडम टीचिंग है, कोई डॉक्ट्राइन नहीं है। उनको शुरू में भगवान को उन्होंने याद दिलाया कि लगा था कि ये चीज़ टीचिंग इतनी सटल है कि लोगों के समझ नहीं आएगी। फिर ब्रह्मा सहमपति ने उन्हें रिक्वेस्ट किया कि लोग ऐसे हैं थोड़े बहुत, तो उन्होंने आगे फिर वो उन जो परिव्राजक थे उपका, उनसे मिलने की बात कही कि उसको उन्होंने पूछा आप कौन है, तो उन्होंने कहा मैं पूरी तरह सम्यक संबोध हूँ, तो उसको समझ ही नहीं आया ये बात। तो फिर उन्होंने कहा कि उसका सम्यक संबोध कहने का मतलब है कि मैं अवेयरनेस हूँ, लेकिन वो बात उसको समझ में नहीं आई। तो फिर उन्होंने अपना स्टैंस बदला और जो अपने पुराने पंचवर्गीय भिक्षु के पास गए तो 4 आर्य सत्यों का शिक्षा दी। तो ये आर्य सत्य हैं, ये परमार्थ सत्य नहीं है, क्योंकि परमार्थ सत्य तो धर्म है। ये आर्य सत्य हैं जो परमार्थ सत्य की ओर इंगित करते हैं हमको। तो हम जानते हैं पहला आर्य सत्य दुख आर्य सत्य, समुदय आर्य सत्य, निरोध सत्य और निरोधगामिनी पटिपदा सत्य। तो पहला आर्य सत्य जो है उसमें दुख की बात कही गई कि दुख है और उसको समझना है, उसको हटाने की कोशिश नहीं करनी। और अगर किसी चीज़ को समझना होता है तो उसको हमको एक्सेप्ट करना पड़ेगा, तभी हम उसको समझ पाएंगे। इसलिए खंति की आवश्यकता होती है, तो इसलिए वो दोबारा उन्हें याद दिलाया खंति पालन क्यों आवश्यक है। और उन्होंने बताया कि हर एक कार्य सत्य के 3 जैसे हम जानते हैं त्रिविध तरीके से करना होता है। पहला उसका स्टेटमेंट है परियत्ति, फिर पटिपत्ति कि क्या उसमें करना क्या है, और तीसरा पटिवेदन की वो पूरा कर लिया गया है। क्योंकि ये सब जो है एक विवेचन का पैराडाइम है, इसमें कोई बुद्धि के स्तर पर सोचने की बात नहीं है, एक्चुअल डायरेक्ट अनुभव की बात है, एक दिल से जैसे कहते हैं महसूस करने की बात है। और ये इंट्यूशन की बात है, इंट्यूटिव अवेयरनेस की। उन्होंने कहा कि इस रिट्रीट में सारा ध्यान जो इसी ओर दिया जाएगा, इंट्यूटिव अवेयरनेस को डेवलप करने के लिए। तो दूसरा आर्य सत्य, समुदाय आर्य सत्य का, तो उन्होंने कहा क्योंकि जब हम यही कहते हैं कि समुदाय होता है तो इसका मतलब है कि वो दुख परमानेंट नहीं है, तो इसी से समझ में आना चाहिए। ये कहना कि हम कहते हैं कि जीवन दुख है, वो सत्य नहीं है। भगवान ने कहा कि इसका उदय होता है तो ना अनंत अंत भी होगा ही। और उदय का कारण अविद्या है, जिसके कारण तन्हा जागती है, और वो फिर 3 तरह की तन्हा के बारे में बताया उन्होंने, काम तन्हा, भव तन्हा, विभव तन्हा। और तन्हा का भी कहा कि एक तरह का संस्कार है जो कि हम सजगता से देख सकते हैं, और क्योंकि वो अनित्य है तो देखते देखते समाप्त हो जाएगा। लेकिन इतनी देर तक देख पाना उसको, उसके लिए शांति की और पेशेंस की, धैर्य की बहुत आवश्यकता रहती है। और दूसरे आर्य सत्य में जो तृष्णा है उसको जो है बेसिकली जानना है, और उसको धकेलने की कोशिश नहीं करनी, सिर्फ जानना है एंड उसके त्याग करना इन द सेंस कि उसको पकड़ के नहीं रखना है। और कई बार अगर हम इसको ठीक से नहीं समझेंगे तो त्यागने को बाहर धकेलने की बात करेंगे और इसको भी एक ऑब्सेशन बना लेंगे, तो जो है विभव तन्हा बन जाती है। तो इसलिए हमको समझदारी से काम करना चाहिए। जो अवेयरनेस है उसकी अपनी विजडम, उसी में विश्वास रखना चाहिए। और इस प्रांग में उन्होंने एक और कहा कि जो मेडिटेशन टेक्निक है तो सारा अवेयरनेस के बेसिस पे रहनी चाहिए, कहीं वो मैकेनिकल ना बन जाए। क्योंकि अवेयरनेस ही अमृता धम्म का मार्ग दिखाता है। तो जो कोई भी जैसे दुख आता है, कोई दुख है, जैसे कोई गुस्से की बात की थी, कि उसको फिर हमको देखने के लिए पेशेंस की बहुत ज़रूरत होती है। क्योंकि वो अगर हम देखेंगे हो सकता है वो विचार के रूप में चला जाए, लेकिन उस पर शरीर पर असर काफ़ी देर तक रह सकता है। उसको देखते रहेंगे जब तक कि वो सचमुच में निरोध ना हो जाए। तो फिर निरोध जब अनुभव होता है तो वो पीसफुल है, शांत है, क्योंकि निरोध की स्थिति में प्योर कॉन्शियसनेस है, वो उपलब्ध रहती है, और वो उसका स्वरूप ही शांति का है। तो इस तरह तृतीय आर्य सत्य भी इस तरह से जुड़ गया उसमें कि दुख का निरोध है, और उसको निरोध को अनुभव किया जा सकता है, उसको रियलाइज़ करना चाहिए। और फिर एक बार उन्होंने बताया कि जो ये निरोध है ये गहराई से महसूस होता है। शुरू में तो हल्का सा महसूस होगा, फिर वो दोबारा आत्मा अंदर ही चला जाएगा, लेकिन वो इसको बार बार अभ्यास करने पे इतनी गहरी इंसाइट हो जाती है कि हमारे अंतर्मन तक वो बात, विपाक कम जो है वो अंतर्मन तक जो है दुख निरोध का भाव बैठ जाता है। फिर भी विपाक कम जागता रहता है, लेकिन फिर उससे हमको पर्टर्बेशन नहीं होती, मन हिलता नहीं है। फिर चौथा आर्य सत्य का संक्षेप में उन्होंने बताया कि सम्मा दृष्टि जो है वो मुख्य बात है कि हमारी दृष्टि सम्यक हो। और अगर हम 3 आर्य सत्यों के त्रिविध तरह से मतलब 9 इंसाइट ठीक से प्राप्त कर लेते हैं, तो इसका मतलब हमारी अंडरस्टैंडिंग भी पक्के हो गई है, दृष्टि सम्यक हो गई, और फिर वो पास अपने आप निकल आता है। क्योंकि दृष्टि सम्यक होगी तो हमारे संकल्प भी सुधर जाएंगे, वाणी भी सुधर जाएगी, कर्म भी सुधर जाएंगे, जीविका सुधर जाएगी, एफर्ट की भी, सती भी और समाधि भी। तो ये एक के बाद एक करने की ज़रूरत नहीं होती। अब वो कहते हैं कि अगर आप इस तरह से करें 4 आर्य सत्य के माध्यम से दृष्टि सम्यक हो जाए तो बाकी सारी चीज़ें अपने आप हो जाती हैं, और फिर हम संसार से हमारा रिलेशनशिप मैत्री का रहता है, और ब्रह्म विहार जो है स्वतः ही जागने लगते हैं। उन्होंने ध्यान दे रहा है कि जब हम अपने पर्सनैलिटी के रूप में अपने को देखते हैं तो हम हमारी पर्सनैलिटी सबकी कॉम्प्लिकेटेड है विपाक के जो कर्म है उनके कारण, लेकिन विभिन्न पर्सनैलिटी, अब हम आपस में जब मतभेद होता था हम सोचते हैं मेरे जैसा क्यों नहीं हो सकता, तो ऐसा संभव नहीं है। कोई भी आदमी 2 आदमी एक जैसे हों, क्योंकि उनकी पर्सनैलिटी, उनके विपाक कर्म अलग अलग होंगे, हैबिट पैटर्न अलग होंगे, लेकिन जो सामंजस्य है हम सब में वो इस प्योर अवेयरनेस के आधार हो सकता है, जो हम सब का ग्राउंड है, जिस पे हमारा सारा जीवन चलता है। तो वो हमारा एक कॉमन बॉन्ड है जो पर्सनल भी नहीं है, तो वो सचमुच में हमारा वास्तविक स्वरूप है। और जो भगवान की शिक्षा है वो कहते हैं वो उसी तरह इंगित कर रही है हमारा। करुणा ब्रह्म विहार का अभ्यास करना था, करुणा ही लिखा था, करुणा ही लिखा था ना उसमें। करुणा ब्रह्म विहार का आलम्बन हम सब जानते हैं अब तक। दुखी प्राणी, दुखी के मन की दुख दूर करने की इच्छा, वो करुणा ब्रह्म विहार का आलम्बन बनता है। तो इस समय चारों ओर दुख ही दुख है, उसकी ओर ध्यान करके, उसकी ओर मन में वो भाव लाके, जो भी हमने पढ़ रहे हैं या सुना है समाचारों में इधर से या डायरेक्टली जाना है, उस बात को मन में चित्रण करके हम थोड़ी देर शांति से विचार करते हैं उस पर, और करुणा का जगाने का शरीर में प्रयास करेंगे। अपने आप शरीर में जग जाएगी। हम विचार करें करुणा का इस बार से कि इतना परेशानी है, इतना दुख है, तो ये मन में भाव जागता है कि सबका दुख दूर हो, जो बाधाएं हैं इलाज में वो दूर हों, जो अज्ञानवश लोग इसको फैला रहे हैं नासमझी के कारण, उनमें से नासमझी समाप्त हो। कुछ रिसर्च हो रही है दवाओं की, वो सक्सेसफुल हो, वैक्सीन सक्सेसफुल हो, ताकि इस बीमारी का जो महामारी का फैलना है वो कुछ रुक सके। ये स्वतः ही ये भाव मन में आते हैं। तो अगर हम इन भावों को नर्चर करें मन में, तो उसका असर शरीर पे भी होने लगता है। स्वतः ही शरीर में धीरे धीरे उस तरह की वेदना होने लगेंगी। हमें कुछ नहीं करना, चुपचाप बैठ के ये भाव अपने मन में बनाए रखें, मन में भाव लाएं रखें। जो भी दृष्टांत हमारे को याद हों, जो हमने सुने हों, पढ़े हों, देखे हों, उनको याद करके अस्पतालों की क्या स्थिति होगी, किस तरह से डॉक्टर इस समय 24 घंटे परेशानी में हैं। हमारे भी एक जानने वाली है बिटिया जो हॉस्पिटल में जाती है, कैसे 24 घंटे ड्यूटी दे के आती है और फिर अलग रहती है। तो ये सब दृष्टांत आप याद कर सकते हैं, तो मन में स्वतः ही करुणा जागती है। करुणा की भावना को व्यक्त करते हुए ये चैंटिंग थोड़ी सी कर लेते हैं। वचसा मनसा चैव वन्दामे ते तथागते, शयने आसने ठाने गमने चापि संवदा, सदा सुखेन रक्षन्तु बुद्धा सन्ति करातुवं, ते हि त्वं रक्षितो सन्तो मुक्तो सर्वभयेन च। सर्वरोगविनिमुक्तो सर्वसन्तापवर्जितो सर्ववेरमतिकन्तो निर्वृतो च तुवं भव तेषां सच्चेन शीलेन खन्ति मेत्ताबलेन च तेऽपि तुमे अनुरक्षन्तु आरोग्येन सुखेन च। पुरस्थिमस्मिन् दिशा भागे सन्ति भूता महीन्धिका तेऽपि तुमे अनुरक्षन्तु आरोग्येन सुखेन च। दक्षिणस्मिन् दिशा भागे सन्ति देवा महीन्धिका तेऽपि तुमे अनुरक्षन्तु आरोग्येन सुखेन च। पश्चिमस्मिन् दिशा भागे सन्ति नागा महीन्धिका तेऽपि तुमे अनुरक्षन्तु आरोग्येन सुखेन च। उत्तरस्मिन् दिशा भागे सन्ति यक्षा महीन्धिका तेऽपि तुमे अनुरक्षन्तु आरोग्येन सुखेन च। लोकपालों का गुरु पुरीं दिशं दतरट्ठो दक्षिणेन विरुल्लको पश्चिमेन विरूपक्षो कुबेरोत्तरं दिशं चत्तारो ते महाराजा लोकपालाय सस्सिनो तेऽपि तुमे अनुरक्षन्तु आरोग्येन सुखेन च। आकाशट्ठा च भूमट्ठा देवानागा महीन्धिका तेऽपि तुमे अनुरक्षन्तु आरोग्येन सुखेन च। थोड़ी देर अपने शरीर की ओर ध्यान करके अपने आप जो भी तरंगे शरीर में व्याप्त होती हैं उनको सभी दिशाओं में अपने आप हम स्वतः ही उनको फैलने देंगे। उसके लिए भी एफर्ट की ज़रूरत नहीं होती, बस इतना मन का ये भाव बनाना है कि ये फैलना शुरू हो जाए। वो अपने आप तरंगे थोड़ा थोड़ा जितना भी फैले केवल विजुअलाइजेशन मात्र से ही हो जाता है, उसके लिए जोर लगाने की ज़रूरत नहीं पड़ती। हर दिशा में अगर हम जानते हों कुछ को, उनको याद करके, जो परेशान हो रोग के कारण या किसी और चीज़ के कारण, या उस दिशा में जो हॉस्पिटल हैं उनका ध्यान करके वहाँ जितने भी पेशेंट हैं वो सब, उन सब के दुख दूर हो, जल्दी ठीक हो। इस तरह से एक्टिवली मन को एंगेज कर सकते हैं करुणा के भाव में, जबकि वाइब्रेशंस फैल रही हैं। नाते भवतु अंतरायो सुखी दीर्घायुको भव, सुखी दीर्घायुको भव, सुखी दीर्घायुको भव। भवतु सर्वमङ्गलं रक्षन्तु सर्वदेवता सर्वबुद्धानुभावेन सदा सुखी भवन्तु ते। भवतु सर्वमङ्गलं रक्षन्तु सर्वदेवता सर्वधर्मानुभावेन सदा सुखी भवन्तु ते। भवतु सर्वमङ्गलं रक्षन्तु सर्वदेवता सर्वसङ्घानुभावेन सदा सुखी भवन्तु ते। सम्मा सम्बुद्धो भगवान् बुद्धं भगवन्तं अभिवादेमि। साक्षातो भगवता धम्मो धम्मं नास्सामि। सुपटिपन्नो भगवतो सावक संघो संघं नमामि।